Hello, everybody. Today, my guest, Dr. Jen, and I are talking about the 1990 comedy classic Home Alone. Can't tell you how many times I've seen this movie. We had a lot of fun breaking down the family dynamics and some of the questionable parenting decisions. If you're listening to this for the first time, my name is Anthony Franzese. This is the Successful Working Parents podcast, where normally we interview working parents on how they're able to balance it all and still thrive. But today we're switching it up with another movie breakdown. So I hope you have as much fun listening to this as we had recording it. If you enjoyed the episode, please share with a friend. Anyway, on to the show. Welcome back to the Successful Working Parents podcast. Today, we are talking about the 1990 smash hit Home Alone. My guest today is Jen Johannsen. Jen, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure to have you here. If you would, why don't you give us a quick intro for the audience?
Sure. So I am a mom of two little boys. They're age 2 and 5. Particularly relevant to this show is that my younger son was born on Christmas Day.
Wow.
So yeah, we do the Christmas movies really big in our house for many reasons. But I am a dentist. I've cut back. I'm super part-time, work-life balance, or as I like to put it, like life work balance or life, like putting the life first is something that's been really important to us. So my husband and I have taken kind of like a unusual path through our professions, but I'm now a super part-time dentist. He's a real estate agent and is self-employed. And I have a side gig with content creation and coaching.
Awesome. Love it. Well, you and I were discussing what movies to do, and this one was kind of one that we both were really interested in. What's your relationship like with Home Alone?
Oh, I love it. I love it. You know, I never had to think about it through the lens of some of the things we're going to talk about today until recently, but I was thinking about this on the way home from driving my son to school today. 1990 was 34 years ago.
That's crazy. Yeah.
And it still is on everybody's. I mean, we talked about it with a patient yesterday who's in his 70s, and he's like, oh, I already watched it. I'm going to watch it again before Christmas. Pretty remarkable.
So I was 3 when this movie came out.
I was 2.
Yeah.
I was 3 also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've seen it a million times, but I think I realized I probably saw the second one even more.
Okay.
Because it probably, that was like when we were like 6, right? So I think then,
right.
So I've seen them both countless times. I as I was watching, I was expecting some things to happen that actually do happen in the second one. But I've seen this. I don't know how many times I've seen this movie. It was really interesting to watch it. I haven't seen it since I became a parent, so it's interesting to watch it through that lens. But yeah, let's dive into it. I think the 3 of the themes that popped out to me that I think we'll get into are dealing with siblings getting along. I feel like that'll be really relevant, to hear your take on that as well. Like the guilt of being a bad parent comes up in this movie a lot, and I think it's something that we all struggle with. And then just actually listening to your kid and trying to hear them out where they're coming from. I think a lot of this movie would be resolved if that was the case. But so the movie opens up, right? The absolute chaos. I didn't realize Joe Pesci was introduced right from the beginning, but he's the cop in there, and they're getting ready to go to France. And it's just like I was trying to figure out how many people are in this house, but there's, I guess, multiple cousins, uncles, aunts. Kevin's one of 5, but there was at least like 15 people in the house.
I think there's 13 people. I think it's 6 kids in the other family. So it's 11 kids, or no. I don't know. I think it's 13 people.
It's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot of people. I mean, I always remembered all like the memes about what the hell did Kevin's dad do to afford that house and like to go to France, stuff like that. I couldn't find anything on that. I Googled it. The novelization of the movie says he's a businessman, but that's as far as we get.
And then I did pick up a line where it said that the brother or family member who had moved to France gifted them the trip. So
yes, so some serious wealth in the McAllister family for sure, which leads me to think the issues of the movie could have been solved with some money when they didn't throw any money at the problem really. So I'm not sure what was going on there. But we have to mention just Macaulay Culkin, a huge part of our childhoods, obviously. Like he's so cute in this movie. He's really
so cute.
He's great.
And my little guy, my Christmas baby, actually resembles him. So we've been getting him to do
that's
the
amazing.
whole, I don't know if this will be on YouTube, the whole, the iconic shaving cream scene. And he can do it and he can crush it and it's very cute.
That's hysterical. And so I guess the younger cousin was his little brother, Kieran, who's from Succession. I don't know if you caught that.
I knew that and I forgot. Thank you for reminding me. I'm obsessed with Succession, although it got too dark at the end, but I did watch it
way too dark. But it's hysterical to see this kid be a cute little boy, and then he becomes like a total. Obviously, it's just the character,
like a monster.
The characters are not. Yeah.
Kieran in Succession was
Ro-
The
Roman,
yes, yes,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah, so definitely a lot different than this little kid. You got Pete from Pete and Pete, if you remember that show as
Yep,
well.
I do.
And then the other ones, I did briefly look. The other siblings didn't really make it too far.
But Kate, what was her more recent? You
Oh,
know
what? I
this.
don't know. No, tell me.
Schitt's Creek.
Oh, I never got into Schitt's Creek.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah,
Oh, it's so good. And her character is so different.
oh, so the
She's
mom,
the mom.
right,
She's the
right. I
mom in
did
Schitt's
know
Creek.
that. I did know that, but yeah, I haven't
Yeah.
seen that. But yeah, so really right from the beginning, we get the setup of Kevin feels misunderstood and he doesn't like his family. He says, when I grow up and get married, I'm living alone, like that kind of
Which is
stuff.
funny because he specifically says, I'm going to get married and live alone.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So what did you think of, like, just early on, the mom was kind of being dismissive of him on the phone when he wanted to watch a movie with that he wasn't allowed to watch?
Yeah. So, I would say that does parallel some of my own struggles, but it's also things I work on. I mean, I still get distracted by my phone. I do still work on it. I do think our generation has been able to try to learn more of these things. And it's not to knock our parents' generation or anything like that. It's just that there's so many more tools and knowledge and ways to share information available today. I'm a huge Dr. Becky fan. I don't know if you've gotten down that rabbit hole of parenting stuff, but yeah, she does, dismiss him. And I also get distracted by technology. So, yeah, it's relatable.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's something that I'm really trying to think more about, is like not modeling that kind of behavior in front of my kid, and it's probably harder now than it was then, because there's just so
So
much.
much.
You're
Yeah.
so connected to everything, right? Like the idea of like the corded phone would be being the distraction is so minor compared to the smartphone in our pockets, but it's definitely an issue.
Yeah.
And so then we get the pizza. Speaking of like what didn't age well, the pizza was like $12 a pizza, 100, all those pizzas for $120. I mean, I just moved out of New York City. $12 could be like a specialty slice sometimes. You know what I mean?
I'm
Like,
sure.
yeah,
I visit the city at least once a year. Yeah, I don't
yeah,
doubt that.
yeah. So I thought that was
Um,
funny. And have you ever seen a pizza place with the slogan of free food if they're late? I noticed that on the car. I feel like that's a thing in movies. Is that a real thing that anyone's ever done?
I've never heard of that
Yeah,
in real life,
yeah.
nor did I know that it's on the car, but yeah, I've never heard of that in real
Yeah,
life.
I was really studying the details, but I feel like that's like a gimmick that you see in like TV shows and movies, but
Yeah.
I've never really seen it. Okay, so we got to talk about Buzz, the brother.
Yes.
I mean, he's an asshole to this kid.
Yeah, he is.
I think Kevin is really innocent for the most part, and I feel like Buzz is really like terrorizing him.
Yes.
Are you in that phase yet, where your older kid kind of picks on the younger one, or they're fighting and stuff like that?
Not a ton. They're doing pretty well at the moment. There are times we have to for at our age, it's more like physical. It's not the like
Right.
bullying or whatever. But no, we fortunately we haven't had a lot of that. When they
Mhm.
get physical with each other, sometimes it's very playful and it helps them get their energy out. So there's a certain amount of that we kind of roll with. But yeah, Buzz is just awful to him. And Kevin, I think by and large, is just this kid that feels misunderstood, right?
Yeah.
Like he's got this mom who loves him dearly, but is distracted. So the difference between Kate and I is that I don't have 5 kids. I have 2,
Yeah.
and, yes, I am guilty of getting distracted at times, and I think we all are. I've had conversations with my older son about that because he's 5, like, my husband and I both have businesses where sometimes we do get, something we have to respond to kind of in the moment, especially my husband's business, but we have tried to say to him, like, "We'll let you know when it's, like, a quick business thing we have to do," or, like, but it is okay to touch our arm if you need something or speak up. So we try to find the balance of him understanding that we can't always hop off the technology, but also be more attentive. Um, I don't think I talked about what your original question was, but
No, that was my question. Really, like just
okay.
dealing with the way like two siblings
2
kind of
siblings,
are
yeah.
interacting. Like, kind of obviously, you want to set some boundaries around what's okay for them to do to each other and what's
Right.
not. I feel like no one's checking Buzz on how he's interacting
No,
with his little
not at
brother,
all.
and
Not at
they don't
all.
even show it, but I imagine he's terrorizing the 3 other
His
siblings he has
sisters.
as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so then they get in this fight, and he spills soda all over the passports, and then the uncle says, "Look what you did, you little jerk." I
Yeah.
mean, to me, I feel like my dad would be like, "What the fuck, dude?" Like, I don't.
Yeah.
I feel like that was, and everyone just like like he was
Accepts it,
accepts
right?
it. Like Kevin's in the wrong. Like they're all just mean to this cute little 8-year-old who's just trying to figure it all out. I feel like he's completely mistreated and misunderstood in this movie.
Couldn't agree more. That was one of two things that I have two things that I wrote down as like what didn't age well that jumped out to me the most, and that was one of the two. It's not only like what he says and how he says it, but it's that nobody else, none of the other three adults pause to try to say like,
Yeah.
see what's going on. Like
Yeah.
the
Right.
delivery of it, the tone of it, a lot of those things just wouldn't fly in a
Uh-huh.
movie today.
Yes,
So yeah.
totally. Totally. Yeah, it would be, I
Mm.
mean, it would be so unbelievable. So
And not to
then,
say that was like a normal family dynamic in the 90s. I can't give enough caveats that this is still a movie. But
right,
yeah,
correct.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And
It wouldn't
I
fly in a movie today.
no, and I mean, I come from a big loud Italian family, and there are certainly like moments like that. But I think, you'd like to see one of the parents kind of sticking up for their son a little bit,
Yeah.
or checking in on
Trying to
the son.
understand.
The dad doesn't
Yeah.
do anything. The mom's the only one that takes any control here. So then, similarly, she puts him in the scary third floor, like for
Right.
for the night, which I thought was
Yes.
like that might have been one of the craziest part because he's only 8.
8.
So I don't know. I don't have an 8-year-old. I don't know like when they're like fully self-sufficient or okay to just be put in a room for the rest of the night. But like there was no like brush your teeth, like no nighttime routine, no like, hey, do you need any
Change your clothes. Are
food
you
or water?
hungry?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just you're going up there. She gives him the freedom to not have the pee pants cousins
Peterson.
go up there, and that's it. And then he's just up there for the night. And I thought this was an interesting interaction because he's saying, "I don't care if I see any of you again. Like I wouldn't be sad if I don't have a family." And the mom really all she can say to that is, "I hope you don't mean that."
Yeah.
And I feel like that would be a really good moment in a real parenting interaction to talk to your kid about their feelings. Like, how do you talk to your kids when these big feelings come up? This is something that I'm just starting to see my daughter develop these little feelings in her little body. And so how do you kind of help your kids navigate when they have these feelings?
And remind me, how old is your daughter?
16 months.
16 months. Oh, wow. Okay, I thought for some reason I thought she was like 3. So it's more with my older son that we've had to work on this. He's 5. He is the epitome of what Dr. Becky refers to as a deeply feeling kid. And I was that when I was a kid too, except this wasn't like a thing we knew about when we
Yeah.
were kids. And with deeply feeling kids, when these big emotions come up, trying to be direct about them can terrify them and shut them down.
Mm-hmm.
Like trying to say, "Hun, are you sad or scared? Let's talk about it." So we talk about what these things feel like when he's calm, so that when he is kind of off the rails, he has context for what he's feeling. And then the biggest thing we do that's been helpful is it's a Dr. Becky thing, but we do thumbs up, thumbs down, or thumbs to the side. Like, "Hey, did something happen at school today?" And he can, if he'll be in his room with his head under his pillow, and he can stick his thumb out and kind of do you want me to stay here, or do you want me to or do you want to be alone? And usually he wants me to stay there and not talk, which is a doctor, like that's very much what she says these kids often need. But he feels things deeply. He escalates quickly. So we have had a lot to learn about how to talk about feelings and then handle them in those escalated moments with him.
It's interesting. Yeah, I feel like I wasn't that way, but they're also like there weren't these tools when we were kids. So I
Right.
wonder if they would have been helpful
Yeah.
when it was happening. I
Yeah.
should maybe work on this thumbs up, thumbs down thing with my wife too. Have you tried? Does it work? Does it work in
So many of
adult?
these
Yeah.
things into practice.
Does it work in adult? The same
Dr.
thing.
Becky, go ahead.
I mean, no, you mentioned like talking about things like when he's calmer and then like so it's easier to process when it's hard. Like same thing goes with a marriage, right? Like you talk
Totally.
don't talk about your biggest issue when you're in the middle of a fight, right? Like you talk about it later.
Seriously. And she often gives examples of how something would land, all these things that like sort of more traditional having the kid obey. She does not fall into the category of what I would call gentle parenting. It's more like we want to emotionally validate, but also set the boundaries and hold the boundaries and be the sturdy pilot. Sturdy is the word she uses a lot. And that really resonates with me. So in these more traditional or authoritative parenting styles where it's just to get kid to obey, she'll kind of give examples of like if you said the same thing to an adult, how it would land like if someone comes in and is like, "Oh, my day was terrible," and they're, "Oh, and then if you just if you just didn't hear that and told them what you want them to just do and just have them listen, like how that lands. And kids are humans. And I love that part of what modern parenting with a conversation includes.
Yeah, no, I love that. But yeah, so that does not happen here. Kind of
Yeah.
just puts in the bed in the scary room. Doesn't really
It doesn't
try
happen
to
here
talk
either.
about his feelings. So the power gets knocked out.
Yes.
No one in the house wakes up before 8 a.m. Which you have 5 kids. You're waking up at your body is forever wake.
5:36,
Yeah. You're just,
maybe.
there's
Yeah.
no way. I mean, maybe you finally get to sleep in, but I mean, somebody would have woken up. And so your kid is, you said like 6.5, right?
5 and 2.
5 and 2. Okay,
Yeah.
so he's 5. So like, can you see a world where he's 8 and you're not helping him in the morning at all between like waking up and getting in the car to go to the airport? I just found that like a little silly too. Like
Yeah.
the
The
mom is just
only
not checking in the car.
not checking
She
in.
locked him in the upstairs room. Never checks on him. Never says, "Hey, like, how are you feeling better after last night? You know, you said some things. Yeah, I don't know how you're feeling. I'm sorry." Like none of that.
None of that,
Yeah.
no. Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can think of is that, like, because there's so many siblings, I think there's at least 2 older sisters, maybe there was some assumption going on there, but no, I can't imagine not thinking of, "Oh, yeah, one of my kids
Yeah,
is
he is also the I
the
believe the youngest of
youngest
the
in his
5.
family."
Right.
Yes.
So you'd think there'd
Yeah.
be a little bit of babying or looking
Yeah.
out for her little baby, like none of that. None of that. No, again, no apologizing, no checking in. But yeah, so the kid counts, or one of the sisters counts the heads and counts the
The
neighbor,
neighbor
and that's
kid.
and that's how that happens. Also, this is something you only realize watching this 100 times. When he knocked the soda onto the passports, the dad goes to clean it up, and he actually throws out Kevin's, I think, ticket and passport. There was a really quick, like, showed it go into the garbage. So I guess that explains how they're doling them out later, and they don't have Kevin's extra ticket. But it was
Huh.
never said explicitly, because that's another huge, like, how do you not know?
How do you
Like,
not know this?
yeah.
Yeah.
But I
Did
guess
not
so.
notice.
Yeah, so that was how it was, and they never like went back and like talked about it. So that checks out. That's the only that does check out. They threw it out on accident, so they're not accounting for it.
And did you
Uh,
notice that when they were about to get on the plane, the airport employee, instead of she's, like, doing this, like, very, like, not she's, like, kind of doing this quick head count type thing. She's not looking at tickets, and she just, like, ushers them all on the airplane.
right.
And
Yeah.
even in 1990, I can't imagine that that was how that would work.
No, I mean, look, I've been in a rush before. I've ran through airports before, but
Uh-huh.
there's some moment where you're half a second to look at your group and be like, okay, are my 5 kids here? Does
Right.
my 8-year-old son need to pee? Like, there's no
Yes.
there's no caring for this kid.
Yeah.
But he wakes up and he thinks his family disappears, and he's very happy about that.
Mhm.
And then we have what I didn't realize also, like Macaulay Culkin is acting like by himself for a lot of this movie.
Oh, you're right, I didn't even
Yeah.
think of that.
Yeah, so he's by
Yeah.
himself. He's rummaging through his older brother's stuff. Plus, he's like 13, had Playboys. I don't know if that's normal or not. It seems a little early, but
Did
he's
not pick up on that
yeah,
detail either.
he's got them. And then, did you think when you were a kid that that movie that they watch
Angels with
was
Filthy Souls.
Angels with the Souls? I assumed it was. I
Oh, I
assumed
assumed
it
it
was
was
real.
real.
Obviously, yeah.
It's not.
Yeah, and then it's in the second movie as well. I don't know if the second movie is like a sequel to it or it's the same movie, but
I think it's called Angels with Filthy Souls too.
yeah. Oh, it is. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Yeah. So yeah, I always assumed it was like some cool movie, but yeah, he's doing all the things, and this to me is timeless, right? Like all the things a little kid would do if they had the house to themselves and didn't have like their parents to tell them what to do. Right? He's watching TV, he's eating snacks, he's making giant ice cream sundaes,
Making a mess
making a huge mess
initially, and then, like
initially.
yeah. And then in terms of something that, like, didn't age well, I don't think there's a movie that would be made for kids these days that would have the sound of gunshots in it. Unfortunately, that would just be unfortunately, with the world we're in right now, this wouldn't be
True.
a thing. But
Absolutely, yeah.
in that movie, in that period of time, it is an iconic part of the movie, and there are some very epic tricks that he comes up with
Right. Yeah, I think
based on that.
they would. Yes, and it's almost a key part of both movies.
It
But yeah,
is.
you're right.
Yeah.
In this day and age, like that wouldn't be something he'd want to do. He'd want to watch
Right.
like, I don't know, Spider-Man or something. Um, I mean, if you're 8, like, are you content with being home alone? I mean, 8's like, what's that, like second grade, third grade? Like it just,
It's like 3rd
yeah,
grade, I wanna say. Yeah.
yeah,
I don't know. I think because he was so fed up with think about the amount of chaos he was around all the time. So it tracks for me. I mean, I think this whole thing happens in the span of like a day and a
yeah.
half,
It's like a
doesn't
couple of
it?
days.
So
Yeah,
like
yeah. And I
2
guess
days.
we could assume as the youngest of 5, he's probably a little more self-sufficient
Yeah.
and kind of taking care of stuff. Okay, so you're a mom, right? You're on a plane to Paris, and you realize halfway through that your 8-year-old is
Just at
at
home.
home. How, like, that's your worst nightmare, especially in the 90s, no phone or no internet, right?
Right.
Like, you're just so screwed.
Yeah.
Um, and I think they do a decent job of like showing they're upset and worried. I guess they have the captain try to the call somehow.
Do they, or is it just when she gets off, she goes to a payphone?
Well, that definitely
Okay,
happens.
maybe they did have. I don't remember that captain part, but they go to the payphone. They call I guess the airport back in the States, and they're just very she gets handed. Oh, she calls the police, who hand her off to the airport people, who
I
hand her
know
off
that
to
was
another
frustrating.
person,
Yeah,
and back to the
yeah, yeah.
police. And the police do almost nothing. They like knock on the door, assume there's no one there, and call it a day, which I don't think is realistic, but necessary for the plot.
So I think even less realistic than that is that they never do it again. Like the parents are never again calling like, "Hey, cop, did you talk to my son?" Like there's a world where yes, you're gone for 2 days, but you're talking to someone that's talking to your son every hour, right?
Yes.
Like, and I think that they just and then they show the dad in Paris, I guess, talking to like French operators, so maybe just were to believe he can never get through the States again.
Maybe,
but yeah, you have to, when you really start to think about it, you have to like kind of let go of a lot of it because
otherwise,
what would you do, right? You would have called every person you know. Of course, everybody's on vacation, but you would have found somebody to talk to that could talk to your son. Then you would talk to that person about how they talk to their son, right? They just kind of let that go.
And can we also talk about how Kate just happened to have her like address book in her purse, and she whips it out and gives it to the aunt? Like,
right?
Also, a thing that
I didn't even think of that.
Was in the 90s, but we don't.
I did not even think of that. You're not traveling with an address book. It's purposefully like next to your phone in your house. That's a good point. I hadn't considered
mine's
that.
in my phone. Mine's like stored in Shutterfly for when I do Christmas cards like twice a decade. I'm very lackadaisical with them, but I have them in Shutterfly and I have them in my phone. I don't have a physical address book.
Yeah, right. So again, aged poorly from the 90s. Yeah, and I guess Kevin doesn't try to call 911 one time. I mean, he's not scared.
Yeah.
Like it's dark out. He's not scared. Yeah. He seems to be just accepting that I'm alone now and this is what I wanted. And so they just leave it at that. He goes to the store. He gets to buy the toothbrush. He runs away from the cops. He runs into Joe Pesci. He realizes that this guy's actually not a cop. Like something's wrong. I guess he sees the gold tooth and he knows that something's up. I don't know if you caught that little glimmer.
Yeah. And I did not realize until I watched it this week that Joe Pesci is the cop in the beginning. I just never put that together that he was trying to. And that's unrealistic then and now, but even more so now that there would just be some person in your foyer for some extended period of time and no adult or even kid is like.
I mean, I feel like even more so in the 90s, like to a kid, a cop is like a big deal.
Yeah.
But I feel like they would be like, oh, a cop's here, right? Like, I agree. That part was a little silly, but a fun part. Yeah. So there's a lot of these scenes are just so iconic, like the fake family dancing around that he creates. That's like such a key scene that to try to throw them off the trail, but realistically, what was he doing? Just doing that for hours, like waiting for them to drive by? Like he has no idea when they're going to check on him. But
speaking of, have you seen the commercial that came out last year that riffs on that scene?
Yeah. Yes. Remind me though.
I want to say it's Google's version of an Alexa, and it's like it's Macaulay Culkin as a 45-year-old or whatever he is now, in that house, which looks remarkably the same. I don't know how much they had to do with AI, and he does it all like he's just talking to the thing, and it's turning all the. It's basically how he would have handled it in a modern era, and it's great.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we could definitely get into that, but if this movie happens, if this scene happens in 2024, this conflict, the whole thing is resolved by the use of cell phones and probably like
ring cameras,
and like I have the Alexa that you can like drop in on and talk to it, so the whole thing is smoothed over so much. A lot of these movies, just the key to the plot is there's no cell phone or internet.
Correct.
We get a little more of Buzz just being like a shitty brother, just talking about how he doesn't care about Kevin, this and that. The only thing, like the best thing the mom does in a sea of, I think, not great parenting is she does demonstrate like, I'm going to do whatever I got to do to get back to my kid. Like to me, that was the one thing that's the most realistic thing in parenting for me. Like you would do it, like you would definitely like helicopter over there. You do whatever you could, right?
Hop on a U-Haul van with a polka band, right? In her case,
yeah. No, so I agree. She's like bribing people. Like, can I take your spot? she agrees to just like stay in the airport on standby till she can get on a flight. Like that to me is what you would do if you had no other choices, other than of course actually calling somebody that would help. That would, like, you're in the airport.
Like a neighbor that can go over.
I mean, you would keep calling the cops and
Cops.
confirming that they spoke to your son. They just let that go.
Yeah.
Quick aside, they also say Home Alone a lot in this movie, and I love when a movie says the title of the movie, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, I did too, and I didn't notice that until this time through.
Yeah,
they say
yeah.
Yeah.
They say it a bunch of times.
Kevin's home alone. I'm
Yeah,
home alone.
yeah. Also, the other thing is that Kevin never decides like, oh, actually, I think I was left here. He kind of just believes the whole time that he wished them away.
You're right, and
They never resolved that. They never really resolved that.
My 2-year-old even knows, like, when we're going on a trip and we have like a countdown of days, and then that's the day we're leaving and all that. So yeah.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah,
yeah.
He knew the trip was coming, didn't
Yeah.
he? Yeah. That's silly.
Especially like a trip to Paris.
Right. So I think we got to talk about the Kevin and the old man in the church.
Oh,
yes. This is when I realized to myself, oh, Macaulay's been acting alone, and now he's actually having this great scene with this. It's a really great like the gems of like a young kid like talking to like a wise older guy, and so they're talking about family is complicated, and that it's kind of this like it's tricky, but it's all you have sometimes, right? And I think that's an important, to me, that was like the best life lesson from this movie is like, yes, like the family you have is the one that you get, and yes, you have complicated feelings towards them, but ultimately you're there for each other, and you make up when you can. And yeah, what'd you think of that scene?
I loved it. I love the whole plot with that man. There's a whole level to like not making assumptions about people. The way he and Kevin connect. I don't know if you've ever had an experience like this, but I have times that I do feel like I connect with someone in a way where age isn't even like remotely, like I've had a few patients lately who are very elderly, and sometimes I feel like I connect on such a real level. And I have a professor from college who's in his mid 80s who I'm still in touch with. There's something about connecting with people who are a completely different generation that when you can slip into that level of just connecting as a human to a human, it's harder to do that with our parents and our kids. It's harder because we have these specific roles mapped out for us, right? Yeah. Or even our siblings. But yeah, I thought that was beautiful and very timeless.
Yeah.
And something that I try to show up as that as often as I can, but as that like very like just human, like humble, able to see the person clearly once they're that type of thing. But yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't considered that, but yeah, it's almost like he needed to connect with an adult that wasn't his family to kind of hear those things, right? Because it's just too murky to hear what you need to hear from the people you're interacting with. And so, yeah, I thought that was a great scene. Yeah, and they set it up. Also, another good point. They really set up this old man Marley as like he like kills people. He like does all kind of crazy stuff.
Buries them with a shovel. And
and throughout the movie, he's like startling Kevin at various times.
Right. So my 2-year-old, who has been a little bit speech delayed, and he's all of a sudden come a long way. So it's a big deal. When we were watching it the other night, and it was his first time seeing it, as soon as the guy came on, he said, "I do not like that guy." And he just kept repeating it over and over. So we ended up fast forwarding through a little bit of it. But I thought that was funny that at his age, he was able to articulate exactly what the movie was trying to, make us think of him.
What did your older son think of the movie?
Oh my gosh. So we tried to watch it with him a couple of years ago, and he was too scared. We skipped last year because Jingle All the Way, as you know, is our family Christmas movie that we watch on repeat. We picked it back up again this year. He was into it, like decently into it, until all the tricks started to happen, the pranks. And then I videotaped him watching it through for the first time because he was just like, like he just had all these reactions. And you just couldn't believe it. So yeah, he loved it.
So he liked the tricks more, you're saying?
He liked it now. It was too much for him, and we ended up not finishing it a couple of years ago, which I don't think that we planned to show it to him all the way through. I think we may have stopped before the tricks, but even just the idea of the burglars and the van and the old man with the shovel, like
the
that
furnace, the scary furnace.
A furnace, yeah.
So I could see that this being like, again, like today's kids movies would just be, or family movies would just be a little less edgy in different ways, for sure. We'll get to this, but the tricks scene is incredibly violent, of course.
It is.
So, that would never. You wouldn't even want to like let a kid think he could do these things.
No,
really.
no.
The only thing about the old man, not to now slag him after all this positive talk, but he's seems to be aware that Kevin's alone, right?
You're right.
He sees him 3 or
You're
4
right.
times, and he he's
He does
helpful,
not
but
call the cops.
he doesn't check in. I guess the mom doesn't have his number, of course.
And he seemingly lives in the
He lives
neighborhood.
next door, I believe. I
Oh, he
think
lives
he's
next door. I
yeah,
didn't pick up on
yeah.
that.
I think in the church he says, "You're like my next door neighbor." Okay, so we get to the traps and the tricks that we just mentioned. I think this is needs to be discussed a little bit, but I really like this scene. It's of course I think like this and just it's so like it's like its own concept now, right? It's like beyond the movie. It's just become like its own like verb of like home aloneing something.
Yes.
So it's great. Again, he doesn't call the cops though. He's just like, I'm going to handle this myself. But I get that makes it fun. What to you stood out as like the most ridiculous part of this scene?
Oh, there are so many. I don't want to I could talk for a whole podcast on that, but so anything hanging from the ceiling, there's a few things that are like swinging, like that's
Mm-hmm.
completely unrealistic. Him hanging the zip line, completely
Yep.
unrealistic. The
Yeah.
guys getting on the zip line and like thinking that was a good idea, completely unrealistic. Yeah, I have a bunch. What do you think?
Those are all good ones I hadn't thought about. But yeah, like the idea that they thought, yeah, let's just shimmy our way
He's just like,
across this. That's so taxing physically. Yeah.
yeah, and
Um,
if he's done all these other things, he's not going to be there with a pair of shears, like
right.
that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they underestimate him the whole time. I think that well, first of all, the iron to the face is
Yes.
drawing blood. I mean, you're talking stitches, huge concussion. Like you can't take an iron to the face like that. I thought that the cars on the floor was probably the silliest as far as like they're both gonna have this huge like feet under them fall from stepping on little toy
Yes.
cars.
Yes.
Yeah, some of the other things I get behind, like the door being hot and the ice on the stairs, like. But to me, it's like you're not gonna trip on those things.
Yes.
But again, classic scene. He finally calls 911. He goes across the street. At this point, I'm not sure what his plan is. He calls 911, but reports the house next door. Right?
Yes.
Did you realize that? I didn't realize that.
Yes.
Yeah. He goes across. It's flooded from when they were flooding before. He seems to be fine with that. Walks to the water. The old man, they find him, and the old man saves him. Again,
Yes.
the old man saves his life. The cops take these bad guys away, and the old man just, I guess, lets him into his house and doesn't say like, "Hey, let me go make sure your parents are okay with what just
You're
happened.
right.
You were just literally kidnapped by 2 murderous burglars. Let me make sure that your parents know what happened." He just kind of lets him go.
Yeah, you're right. I
And
did not think about that either.
And Kevin's just like, all
Because
right,
it
well,
quickly splits to the scene of Kate being like in the U-Haul
yes,
with the polka guys, I think, at that
correct.
point. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And then Kevin's like, all right, I guess I'll just go to bed. And that was
Right.
that was it. Okay. So the mom's in the van, as you mentioned, in the U-Haul with the polka guys. And she's like feeling like a really bad parent.
Right.
I think this is something that we all feel from time to time.
Yes.
Certainly from doing that, but I think even more minor things. And yeah, usually you feel that way, and hopefully you have a supportive partner who's like, don't feel that way. It was not a big deal. But any thoughts on this kind of sensation or phenomenon I've already experienced?
I've been there. My one of my biggest periods of time of parent guilt was so I'm a dentist, and during COVID, our job was just incredibly demanding. Well, we didn't work for a period of time, but then when we went back to work, it was more demanding than ever, and we had all the gear on, and we had all these emotions, and we had different it just was a really taxing job. And I've never been more spent at the end of the day than I was during that. And at the time I just had my older son, he was about 1, but there was a brief period of time that he wanted nothing to do with me, and it was heartbreaking. And I imagine it was correlated to how stressed and burnt out I was. My Instagram account is largely about like burnout and inner emotional stuff that I've figured out the hard way. But yeah, in a very serious kind of way, that was a really painful period of time for me as a mom.
Yeah, I've had a lot of friends who like when they had their second kid, they have like they have a really hard time. Like their first kid gets really mad at them, and they have this like these issues with that. I mean, I have definitely experienced this as far as just like, am I doing something wrong, or like it's hard to know that there's no clear like scorecard, right? So I think you like reflect on the day, and you're just like, man, I could have done that better, or am I bad for doing this? And you just it's kind of second guess yourself a lot.
Oh, for sure. I've the second guessing, I feel like as much as the chaos of a second kid added, at least with the things in the baby face, I second guess myself less with, because that's a little bit less the stuff in that early phase. It's like the feeding, sleeping. It's like you're not trying to think through how to talk them through tough emotional moments or tantrums or all those things. But then there's been this second wave of self-doubt now that I'm in that phase of having
Yeah.
to deal with like consequences. Like, we recently took away a Boy Scouts camping trip from Luke, and because he was just kind of wild one weekend, and we really couldn't pinpoint it. And I don't know if that was the best. I don't know if that was the best way to. So what Dr. Becky often talks about is like our goal, our job is to equip them with the skills to handle the big emotions. And I tried to do both. Like if you're just taking the thing away, you're not helping them do any better next time. So it's a balance.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I can imagine once like you start disciplining, it probably becomes really often where you're like, should I have done that, or was that the right thing to do?
Yeah. Or was it like age appropriate? Like, does he even get what, like, he's never been on a camping trip. So does he even, I don't know. There was a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we don't want to parent shame anybody, but this mom is not great at.
Yeah.
She should feel a little bad for leaving her son at home. And then okay, so imagine you're her.
Yep.
You gone for 2 days. You left your 8-year-old son at home. You walk in the door and you see him. And what's the first thing you say to him? Is
You
it
run
Merry?
over and you're like, hi.
Right? Yeah. It's not Merry Christmas. It's not like that's the first thing out of her mouth. Merry Christmas. Like what are you talking about? How about like, hey, you're alive. I'm so happy. Like what happened? Are you okay? Like I think she says Merry Christmas and I'm really sorry, Kevin.
I don't remember the Merry Christmas. What jumped out to me was that there's just like this long pause, and he
Yeah.
looks upset and angry, and then he softens, and then they embrace. Which, if it was a more minor parenting thing, there's something about that was, I think, quite beautiful, but not in a his life could have been threatened, he was left alone type of.
Yeah, there should have been a little more like concern or urgency or something. She seemed to be like, "Hey, I'm back from the store,
Merry
right?
Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas." And
Oh, and
then
he's cleaned up and decorated the house.
he's gonna decorate the house. Yeah, because after like a long night of like almost getting murdered by kidnappers, you just want to decorate the house and hang up ornaments and stuff like that. So
And there was
I
no damage to the house.
there was
There was
no
no
damage.
damage that you can see,
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so I guess he must have cleaned up
like the paint cans and
the
like all these
paint
things. Like
cans. He
there
also
was
tarred the stairs, and I forgot to mention this, but like I don't know where he got tar from. Like I don't think parents have tar in their basement, but yeah, he had access to tar as well. But yeah, so the house is wrecked. We don't even get into that
Yeah.
at all. But yeah, again, he doesn't. I think we're to believe he doesn't tell his parents what happened, right?
Yeah.
Like they don't cover that.
No.
Just they come home. The rest of the family hysterically comes home right after her because they waited for the regular flight. Which would have pissed me off the most if I was the mom. I would have been like, just pretend.
Yeah.
Come back,
Yeah.
come in like 12 hours later, please. But yeah, he doesn't tell them. We get to see the old man reconcile with his family next door, and
Mhm.
then that's it. The movie ends with Buzz realizing Kevin ruined his room.
And it ends with Kevin's dad finding what?
Oh, the gold tooth.
Yes.
Okay, right.
Yes.
So maybe there's some
Maybe.
questions
But it's supposed
asked.
to be like a,
Right. Yeah.
inconclusive.
I
Like
mean,
like it would in real life, even then it'd be on the news, it'd be in the newspaper, it'd be all the things. The
yeah.
next door neighbor's house was vandalized, all the
Right.
things.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a good point. When he realized that like 5 houses were robbed and flooded, maybe he's going to start, wondering what happened. But yeah, I mean, they're fine, and ends happily ever after, as all good family movies do. All right, just so like a few just discussion topics if we haven't covered yet. We kind of talked about this already, but like anything else that aged poorly for you since 1990? I think like the phone stuff, some of the like the movie stuff, and then like the price of things was
Price of
tough.
things,
Yeah.
and just that one scene with the uncle, that was like the main one that jumped out at me, that like he's so mean, tone and word choice,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
like
you would
no
never.
parents like jump in.
Yeah, and also like not having TSA, not having to go through security. Like
Uh-huh.
that would have been the
Yeah.
perfect time to be like, okay, well, you're rushing there, and then you're online for 20 minutes. So where's Kevin?
Right.
Right? Like that
Right.
would have solved it. What's aged well? We didn't talk about this, but the sibling rivalry also does age well because
It
siblings still
does.
fight, right? Like it's just that's a timeless thing of like the infighting within the siblings and finding your family annoying is also like incredibly
Really,
timeless. You
yeah.
know?
I mean, I think a lot of it's timeless, and that's why we still watch this movie on repeat 34 years later. Like,
Yeah,
a lot of stuff with the old man, I think, is timeless. Like, I think we all have this desire to be like seen at a human level to get into like a deeper sort of meaning, but like we all have a desire to be seen and heard, I think, at our
yeah,
core. And there's something in the dynamic between them where they're both misunderstood, right? Kevin's misunderstood and the old man's misunderstood, but they're both able to sort of validate each other. And that's something that we all crave.
yeah. I'd like to think that they become friendly, you know,
Yeah.
and maybe the dad he comes over every now and then. You're bringing up like a good point about that character that I didn't realize like how important he was thematically. But then they kind of bring it back in the second one with the pigeon lady in
Yes.
New
I
York.
didn't. Yes. I
Yeah,
didn't think
it's the
about that
same. It's the same
parallel.
exact
Same
concept.
dynamic.
Same exact
Yeah.
concept. Okay. Best and worst parenting moment. I
Oh my
mean,
gosh. Okay.
well,
Well,
obviously
worst.
leaving your son at
Leaving
home
your
is the
son at
worst.
home.
Yeah.
That's like without a doubt.
I think the putting him upstairs in the scary third floor is borderline abuse. Really, leaving
Yeah.
him at home is obviously a mistake. Putting him upstairs is intentional. You know.
Yeah. And then a best for me, I think was when Kate's at the ticket counter and she's like, I haven't showered in 2 days. And she's like kind of trying to bribe the woman in front of her. She is, yeah, she's trying
Yeah.
everything she can to get home.
Yeah, and again, that to me was like the most realistic thing that she does, and the best thing she does is demonstrate that she would do anything for her son,
Yeah.
despite the early thing she did in the movie. Like she would do anything to get back to him, and so I really appreciated that. Again, I think you would have been calling the cops more. She's at the airport for hours and hours. You would have been making more phone calls, and you would have done something to get in touch with this kid. But she did her best to get back.
Another thing I thought of that like hasn't aged well, or maybe it's just a big change, is I don't know what kind of clothing your wife wears, but I am in like a Lululemon zip up and leggings right now in a ponytail. And this is kind of my what I wear, this type of thing all the time. And the moms are in like blouses and earrings and makeup, even though it's this like chaotic, like I'm in like almost like a sport mode or a go mode when I'm like, if we're packing the house to leave and we're in my day-to-day life, I'm almost like prepared for an athletic event with two little
Yeah.
boys. Does that
No,
make
I mean
sense? Yeah.
that's kind of like what aged poorly. Like I guess probably to believe that she is like your age and my wife's age, and she just
Right.
it's just a totally different vibe. You
Right.
know that you just wouldn't see. And like people in their late 30s don't act like that anymore.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
for sure. Um, favorite scene for me, I think you have to go with the end scene, like the traps and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah, the traps, and I think my favorite scene is when the old man saves the day. I think
Yeah,
that whole, like, it brings a lot of story arcs
you like
together.
the arc of the old man.
Yeah,
You
yeah, I
like the
do, I
yeah.
do,
Okay,
I
that's
do.
great. All right,
Well, and the shaving cream, I mean, that in the beginning is such a classic.
sure.
Yeah.
Best life lesson.
Listen to the people in your life, and it's hardest with family. I think that'd be my life lesson. It's
Yeah,
hardest with the people that you have these set roles with, your spouse, your kids. It's easier, at least for me, sometimes it's easier in friendships to see the person more neutrally. And I find that in my marriage, I have to be more like aware of like, oh, like I had this irritation from this. I don't know. We just naturally bring more into it with the people we're closest to.
yeah.
And I just have to be more aware, but listening and just being aware of my own, irritations or thoughts or things from the day that I'm bringing into an interaction.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, I think similarly, but like family is complicated,
Yep.
but they're important, right? It's important. You
Yeah.
can't just write them out because of the complication. I think that's another timeless gem. Any other like plot holes or nitpicks or things that you wanted to point out?
Oh gosh. I think that covers it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
I think
again,
that
like
covers it.
not checking in on the cops. To me, that's the biggest one. Like
Yeah.
you would do whatever you could to make sure somebody contact. I mean, they don't know. They never have any confirmation that he's okay.
Right.
Right? Like,
Right.
you would definitely be doing that.
Yes.
Well, Jen, this has been a lot of fun. Where can people go to connect with you, learn more about you, anything that you'd like to share?
Yeah, so the main place I create content is Instagram. It's grounded with Jen with a period between all the words. I also have a blog, grounded-now.com. And my email, if you need anything, is grounded.now.contact@gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, I will link to all that in the show notes.
Awesome.
Jen Johannsen, ladies and gentlemen. Jen, thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Have a good one.